Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
In the movies, the little guy always triumphs over the soulless corporation. In this case, though, the soulless corporation is the movies, or at least the theaters that play them. And the plucky underdog is Canada's long-dormant competition tribunal. As industries in this country continue to consolidate into just a few major players, those behemoths have more power than ever before. And they will often use that power to do what they do best: extract more money in exchange for their services. It's the Competition Bureau and its commissioner and the tribunal that issues rulings on these cases that's supposed to stop them from doing that. All too often, that doesn't happen. But recently, the tribunal did issue its most punitive ruling ever, one that heavily fines a massive corporation for allegedly exploiting the consumer. It also sends a pretty tough message to other corporate giants who are looking to grab a little bit more from your pockets. I'm Jordan Heath Rawlings. This is The Big Story. Tara Deschamps is a business reporter for the Canadian Press. Hey, Tara.
Hi there.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Why don't you start just by explaining to us what the Competition Tribunal did a couple of weeks ago?
So the tribunal, for people who don't know, is essentially a panel that rules on cases about things like abuse of dominance or misleading advertising. And those cases are often brought forward by the competition commissioner, Matthew Boswell, who's basically a watchdog for the country. Last year, he accused Cineplex, which most people will know as the dominant movie theater in this country, of misleading theatergoers about the price of movie tickets they buy online. A lot of people noticed they were being charged $1.50 for every online ticket purchase they made. It was dropped to $1 for people who were part of the Scene Plus loyalty program, and it was waived completely for the people in the Cineclub subscription program. Mm-hmm. But that $1.50 charge had kind of caught the eye of the competition commissioner, who didn't think it was fair and didn't think people realized they were being charged that. And essentially, this went to the tribunal, which agreed with the competition commissioner. They ended up fining Cineplex $38.9 million for deceptive marketing practices. That's a record fine.
Wow. Can you explain maybe for us what exactly that pricing process looked like, at least according to the Competition Tribunal, and where it went wrong?
Yeah. So essentially, the competition commissioner, he claimed that the fees are deceptive because anyone going to the movies isn't presented with the full price of a movie ticket that they're buying online on the very first page they see when they go to buy tickets.
Right.
Cineplex discloses that there might be a fee and there's an amount a customer will pay, but the commissioner said that's below the fold, or I guess off the screen for most moviegoers. So by the time they get to the page where they see what the final ticket price is, they might not have done the math and realized there's an extra $1.50 there. And there was also a countdown timer kind of urging you to move ahead in the process, not to leave the seats.
And I guess that's the difference, because I was thinking as I was reading this story that, this happens all the time, right? Everybody knows Ticketmaster, for example, does this routinely. But then I'm thinking about it, and as much as those fees might be exorbitant, they are right under the price of the ticket, and it gives you that total, right? And that's the difference, I guess?
Yeah. And I mean, when you look at what a company like Ticketmaster would do, oftentimes the fee is not $1.50. And so you notice it. It's a much bigger jump.
Right.
Whereas with it being $1.50, you might not have detected that.
What exactly is that $1.50 supposed to be for?
So the $1.50, when it was implemented, they said it was supposed to help Cineplex further invest and evolve digital infrastructure. And I think at the time they told us it would be for website upgrades, and they didn't really specify more beyond that.
Huh. And is that typical for these kind of fees that, again, we've all just become, I think, so used to paying anytime we make an online transaction?
Well, Cineplex had introduced years ago processing fees for online ticket sales. And eventually they eliminated it around the same time that they really started pushing moviegoers to just buy their tickets all in advance. But you see lots and lots of retailers who will have a fee for things that you purchase online. Often it helps them with the logistics or, just anything that they need to do to be able to deliver that digital service or digital experience to you that would cost a bit more than doing it in person.
One of the things I read is that this is known as price dripping. Can you explain that as a general concept and maybe offer some examples?
Yeah, so price dripping is basically a practice when customers are enticed into making a purchase without really understanding what the full cost would be. And often the way people see it is when they select an item or a service or something that they want to purchase, they go to checkout, and at some point along the way, they're asked to pay. And all of a sudden, there's a breakdown that shows extra fees. And those extra fees aren't things like GST or HST, which everyone understands that they will probably have to pay when they're buying something. It's more like a service fee or a processing fee, or in like the ticket examples you gave, it's like a venue fee. And you see it everywhere. You see it like when you're buying those concert tickets, you see it with airlines, and even some experts I've talked to said that they've seen it with like universities and bus fares and that kind of thing. So you can imagine anything you're buying.
And what exactly are the rules? I mean, you touched on one of them, but the competition tribunal has, and is it them even that set the rules for this kind of thing around it?
No, so it's not so much like the tribunal that sets the rules. There's a competition bureau that the commissioner works for, and it's his job to enforce those rules. But the Competition Act is something that, the government would put in place as a law that would sort of set up what you can do around price stripping or advertising or anything like that. I think in this case, it's caught a lot of attention, not just because there's been so many companies that people think engage in this like price stripping, but also just the fact that like Cineplex is a very big, pervasive company. Everyone goes to see movies. It's something that you easily notice.
What does Cineplex say in its defense?
Cineplex, as you would probably guess, says they're not price stripping. They say there's nothing misleading about how they display online booking fees and the total online price for customers purchasing through the website. And they point out that you can go in person to a theater and buy a ticket and not be charged that $1.50. So they say there is an alternative.
And I guess the movie theaters, with the exception of very few, are not exactly selling out these days still, right? So that's probably still the best option?
Yeah, I think that for them, like the Barbie moment, when everyone rushed to theaters, isn't the reality for them from day to day. And for Cineplex, they had some additional like interesting challenges. Obviously, from the pandemic, they were closed for long periods of time and couldn't operate. And for Cineplex specifically, they were in the middle of a period when they were actually trying to sell the business to a UK theater giant called Cineworld. The pandemic essentially blew up that deal, and they wound up in court for a long time. So for Cineplex, there's been a lot of challenges between all of that and the rise of streaming that I think have made it really important for them to not want to pay this kind of fee that they have. They're appealing it now, the decision from the tribunal.
You mentioned this is the largest fine the tribunal has issued. How common is it for them to actually issue rulings like this? Like, I mean, obviously, I don't follow this very closely, but I don't remember many.
It takes a lot for them to be able to bring a case against a company. They have a few that they've been pursuing against some big giants like Amazon, for example, and they can go on for years. But they recently had some changes in the legislation that made it easier for them to recognize drip pricing as a harmful business practice. And that really helped them be able to pursue this case. There have been other cases, though, that have gone before the tribunal that have resulted in fines. It's just they've really been able to charge more now or offer more of a penalty now.
And how did this end up before the Bureau or the Commissioner in the first place? Is this the kind of thing that begins with average citizens complaining, or what?
It can. I don't think we know too much about the origins of the case. There is a process where there's a form on the Bureau's website. You can fill it out and report to them everything from like price stripping to like price fixing or bid rigging or anything like that. And they walk you through all the issues that they would cover or don't cover. And I suspect what happens from there is they look at the complaints and decide what fits their mandate and start investigating whether the complaint has merit and should be pursued. But from what I understand, it's also possible that there are things that catch the Bureau's eye just in the course of them doing business or going about their daily lives. And if there's enough merit to those things that they notice, they can bring a case as well.
Right.
So I'm not sure whether it was a public complaint or their own sort of observations that triggered this.
What kind of precedent does this set? What's the reaction been just sort of in general business circles? I mean, is this a precedent? Will people sit up and take notice? Most importantly, other companies that, are kind of edging on the brink of this, maybe not?
Yeah, I mean, the experts I've talked to have said, obviously, this will hinge on an appeal. If Cineplex wins an appeal, this might not be very precedent-setting at all. But they warned that if you're a company that is charging an online fee or maybe is using some of the same practices, that you should probably call your lawyers and you should probably reevaluate that now, because this shows that the Competition Bureau was able to win a case that, we're in sort of this new era of looking at price stripping. And it's possible that other companies could be found guilty of the same activity.
This is perhaps a dumb question to ask, but I'm curious. If they lose that appeal, what happens to the almost $39 million? This isn't like a class action, right? Where people will get their $1.50 back if they apply for it?
You're right. This is the number one question people have been asking me, knowing that I've been reporting on this story.
I bought 6 tickets. Where's my $9?
Exactly. That's what I've been asked. And the short answer, from what I can tell, is it's not like a class action. You probably aren't going to get $1.50 back or whatever it is. The remedy they got from the tribunal is called an administrative monetary penalty. And basically, it's paid back to the government in a way, in sort of like these general coffers. But eventually, they're making some changes to the Competition Act. And there's apparently a new restitution remedy. One lawyer I talked to told me that it could eventually be used to give affected people money, but it doesn't come into effect until next June. So I don't know that you'll have much hope in this case.
Last question then. What happens next in the appeals process? Do we have a timeline for this? Where does it actually go once it's gone through the competition tribunal? Who makes that final call?
I don't have a great sense of this yet. I think part of the trouble is that Cineplex hasn't filed that appeal yet. We don't know how soon they will, and we don't know what grounds they'll even use. I was hunting around a bit on the Competition Tribunal's website to see if there was a process that was outlined, and I wasn't able to find something. But I imagine that once we get that appeal in hand, then we'll have a sense of how fast and how this will play out.
Tara, thank you so much for this. It's fascinating.
Thanks for having me.
Tara Deschamps, reporter with the Canadian Press. That was the big story. For more from us, head to thebigstorypodcast.ca, where you will find a Contact Us page if you want to send us some feedback, or you can do that just by writing an email. The address is hello@thebigstorypodcast.ca. You can also call us up on the telephone. We won't answer, but our voicemail will, and we all listen to every one. The number there is 416-935-5935. The Big Story is available in all your favorite podcast players, even the ones you might not like. We're everywhere. Thanks for listening. I'm Jordan Heath Rawlings. We'll talk tomorrow.